Welcome to the 30-Minute Hour. It's the personal development podcast for entrepreneurs who are looking to level up and become unstoppable. I'm your host, Eric Twiggs, your procrastination prevention partner. Joining me as always, you know him as the super CEO, the business strategist extraordinaire, and all-around good guy, Ted Fells. Happy Monday to you. It sounds like I'm maybe having a slight sound issue. Ted, can you hear me okay?
Hear you fine.
Okay, good. Your sound just came back in. Excellent. It is certainly a happy Monday. It is a technology Monday, Ted.
Is that what it is?
That's right. You didn't know that, right? It's technology Monday.
Oh boy.
Oh man. You know, we always say, Ted, this is not your everyday podcast.
It's got to work through it. Got to work through it.
That's right. We are working through our technology challenges, but we are here to present you an outstanding show. But in all seriousness, this is not your everyday podcast. We do things a little different here on the 30-Minute Hour. And Ted, I don't think we got a chance to warn our guest who's hailing all the way from the UK about the fact that we are a little different. We didn't prep him. We didn't warn him. But I think he's going to find out here shortly.
So what time is it in the UK?
It is 11:08 p.m.
That's why he had that look on his face. Like, look, y'all better get this technology going. It's 11:08. Y'all playing around. Y'all gonna be on this podcast doing a little different by yourselves. It's bedtime.
Yeah,
bedtime. We appreciate you, man.
Now, we definitely appreciate you joining us all the way from England, making the sacrifice with the time difference. And we'll give Neil a full introduction because he really has some powerful things he's going to add. And he said some things during, we talked a few weeks back, and he had said a few things that I had to write down. Like, wow, that was profound. So we'll get into that. But like I said, it's not your everyday podcast. You can watch us on this Facebook channel, the 30-Minute Hour. You can also watch us on the YouTube page and LinkedIn page, the 30-Minute Hour LinkedIn and YouTube pages. You can also go back and listen to this episode on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all those places where you like to consume content. And don't forget to go back and watch and ultimately listen to our Thank God It's Monday. You know, this morning we talked about seizing the opportunity to leave your legacy. So every Monday we give you a 5-minute dose of motivation to jumpstart your day to help you attack your week. So make sure you go back and check that out. This morning's Thank God It's Monday is one you don't want to miss. All right. And so today we're going to talk about how to transform into a person of excellence. That's our theme for today, how to transform into a person of excellence. And so I'll just go ahead and introduce our guest now. So one day in 2008, he had this realization that he was a rising star in the wrong field. And that just changed everything for him. That's what started his transformation into the person of excellence that he is today. And today, he is a leading international mindfulness expert, author, and presenter. He's the founder of the Conscious Professional and a pioneer of the Mindfulness and Consciousness Leadership movement. He's also authored 2 books, Conscious Leadership and 100 Mindfulness Meditations. So let's go ahead and introduce him now. Ladies and gentlemen, Neil Seligman.
Wow, thunderous applause, guys. That was really heartwarming. Thank you for that lovely introduction. It's good to be here, guys, and glad we got the tech going. Fingers crossed it holds out.
Absolutely. And it is truly an honor to have you on the podcast. And I definitely wanted to provide everybody with the full perspective so they know the backstory. So let's start with your college days. You're at Bristol. Like, what was the vision you had for your career at that time?
So I was on kind of track to be a lawyer, and I decided that the two options that we have in the UK for lawyers are trial lawyers, which are barristers, or solicitors, which can kind of do pretty much everything, but they're just not specialist trial advocates. And I was kind of interested in that sort of more performative public speaking side of the profession. So that was kind of the vision. But I also had a bit of a weird thing going on even at an early age, which was I always thought about my legal career as plan B, and I would tell people about this. And I had this phrase that I would say, this is plan B and plan A is going to come along. And I didn't know what plan A was, but I just always had a sense that I was playing out this kind of legal thing, and that was like a really, clear path to follow. And I was doing that until this other thing arrived. And yeah, took a little while, but something else did come along.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So looking back, knowing what you know now, if you could go back and talk to that younger version of yourself, like what advice would you give to that younger version of yourself?
I think I rested a little bit on my talent, I would say, in my university days, and I had a lot of fun. I don't regret any of that. I did a lot of, exploring and, experimenting and all the things you're meant to do at university. But I do think that I probably could have achieved a little bit more if I'd applied myself a little bit more to my subjects, rather than just thinking, oh, I can cram it all at, a couple of days before and just spew it out in the, exams. So, I've since sort of started studying a bit around performance, and I always think of Martina Navratilova, the, amazing tennis player. And she would always say that, there are some competitors on tour that are naturally talented more than others. And then there are people on tour who take their talent and don't work very hard because they're talented. And then there's people who have great talent and work really hard. And she kind of spotted that. And she was like, I'm probably one of the most talented players on the tour, and I work harder than anyone else on the tour. And look at that career, look at what that achieves. So I think I was kind of, a little bit lazy, rested on my talent. And maybe if I'd pushed myself, I could have maybe got a first in law rather than a 2-1. Not a big deal, but I think that would be the only thing I would say to myself.
Do you think some of that had to do with the fact that you weren't really clear on your plan A, or?
Could be, yeah. I mean, part of my mindset was kind of into flow and destiny and sort of seeing what comes. And, getting into law, I have to say, initially I was doing it because I thought it'd be really practical and it would help people solve their problems. And so university was a little bit disappointing because the legal degree I was doing was really very much an academic study idea. So, you weren't doing much problem solving or helping people with that to start with. Obviously, it's a good background to then do the more professional trainings, which come a bit later. Yeah.
Okay. So talk to us about that moment in 2008 where everything changed for you.
Yeah. So I was back in court one day. Is anyone else hearing something like a cat pouring the microphone?
Yeah, I'm just hearing that. Let me see something.
There we go. I think, it's coming through Ted's line, I think. So, yeah, I was walking through the car park after court one day, and I bumped into a friend who I hadn't seen for ages. We'd been to bar school together, and he bounded up to me and he goes, "Hey, Neil, how's it going? I hear one of the rising stars of the civil bar." Something that no one had ever said to me before. But when he said those words to me, what I heard in my head was, your star's rising in the wrong field. You have to leave. So he was saying this really nice thing to me, and I was having this kind of almost spiritual insight of clarity drop into my body and being. And it dropped in with the level of clarity. If you can imagine this, it was as if it was like a gong going off inside my body. It was like that amount of resonance and clarity. And it dropped in with such a level of, I can only describe it as truth, that I was like, oh, that's now happening. That's now happening. There was no like, oh, but what if this or what if that? It was like, wow, that is just true. And everything got reorganized from that moment forward. So yeah, it took me about 5 months to wrap up my legal practice. And then I left. And I initially left as a year-long sabbatical. But after 5 months, I got a really deep sense and calling that I had to send a letter of resignation to my barrister's chambers in order to kind of cut the cord and not pretend anymore that this was actually a sabbatical, but it was finished and that this was the start of a new chapter. And actually that moment took quite a bit of courage, more than the truth dropping in moment, which was just super kind of clear and awesome. But that moment of sending that resignation, that felt like a unnecessary burning of the bridge, but it felt required at the same time.
So wait a minute, hold on. So you sent your resignation in without having kind of the new thing lined up.
Yeah.
Huh. So that's interesting. I mean, most people, I think there's a lot of people that feel like that, where they're the rising star in the wrong field, but very few people just get out of that field and think, hey, I'm going to figure it out. I trust my instinct that I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah. So in my little model of plan A was going to come along, what I wasn't counting on was plan B finishing before plan A came along. So that was a bit of a, that was kind of, I kind of think about those, it was kind of 3 years before I even had the idea of the Conscious Professional, which is my business now. But those years were kind of me trawling through my own personal kind of issues and locating what was of value for me to go back to the world with, and also healing some of the rifts between me and the professional world. Because I think sometimes when you're in a job which is pretty relentless and requires a lot of you, I wanted to go back and be of service to people in that profession and people in other industries. But I also had to come to that clean. I couldn't be like coming with an axe to grind or, with an agenda. Had to be a genuine offer. So there's a good deal of kind of healing and self-exploration and so on that happened, and a great deal of kind of expanding out into more of the fullness of who I am, which is a process which actually still, leads me forward today and fascinates me, is that sort of lifelong learning and lifelong self-discovery and uncovering of potential. So but that was the big moment which opened it up. And then just a lot of trust, and there's a phrase that I sometimes help some of my clients with, which is leap and the net will appear. And that was kind of that act of faith of the resignation, leap and the net will appear. But it can't just be a set of words. It's got to feel really true to you. But it felt true for me. So followed it.
So Neil, I like it. I like what you're saying. I like the whole, kind of, go on and, do plan A, before plan B closes out. The whole thing about leaping and, there's going to be a pad that you're going to land on. Look, we got a lot of folks that download this show. I don't want them folks just, you got to walk. There's some more stuff that you got to get them some more than that. You had to have some type of a plan, some savings or something. I don't want a bunch of people leaping because I'm just going to direct them to Eric. I'm directing Eric. I'm saying Eric, Eric is the host. Directing Eric, because
but quite often I'll use my own example as a sort of what not to do for how to manage your career transition. Because I sometimes work with clients, obviously, that are drawn to that story and to the I suppose the later success that I've had in doing my own thing. But yeah, I have to say that I don't wholeheartedly recommend my action plan as a replica to put over anyone else's experience. There are elements, I think, that we can draw from it. Like, when is the moment to bank on yourself, and whatever that leap might be, even if someone has, built up a nest egg and they've got a bit of financial security, and they've got a good idea and it seems to be something worth, putting their all into, you've still got to locate some courage to say goodbye to the old world, and to set sail into the new, right? So there's aspects of it which I think do translate, but it's not the sort of cookie cutter, here's how to do it, guys. Everyone just jump off the cliff. Here we go. But there are those moments, aren't there? And we all have to kind of rise up. If we're ready, if the moment is ready, we have to recognize those moments. And, for me, it was a more extreme version of it, which I went through, and was right in its own way for me, because there was a lot of learning I needed to do as someone who was an overachiever and very success oriented, almost success sort of addicted and infused by success. I had to go through various experiences of things not working out, of failing at things, of figuring out how to use failure as feedback, how to soften my own expectations of self, how to overcome my own perfectionism, and to work in a sort of entrepreneurial way where experimentation means there's going to be good moments and bad moments, and some things you're going to have to just say, well, at least we were on the playing field on that one. Didn't work out, but we gave it a good try.
So Neil, I'm still kind of coming back into this whole leaping thing. Was there anyone else that had a vote in that, or was it all a Neil decision?
It was all a Neil decision.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was with a partner at the time who was supportive. My parents couldn't quite understand why I would be throwing away my legal education, and taking this leap into nothing, essentially, was kind of how they saw it. So, there were a few fraught years there, but they've since come round and learned to understand that there was maybe method in the madness. But no, I very much had to back myself on that. There was very few people thinking it was a good idea, including peers, colleagues, but the people who knew me really well, including my partner, were supportive. My teacher, who I'd met just before this happened, and my teacher was a meditation teacher who's very important in my life, and I've been working with her now for some 15 years or so, as mentor and teacher. So there were enough people that could see me and could feel the truth in what I was doing, and that was enough for me. I think if it had been just me and nobody by my side, I think I probably still would have done it, but it would have been maybe a bit of a darker kind of doldrums, if I can put it that way. There was still some heavy months to kind of work through as I kind of figured life out and what was next. But yeah, no, I was blessed to have people by my side.
So what was the total time window from the time you put your resignation in to the time you ended up being the founder of the Conscious Professional?
Yeah, so that was 3 years, pretty much, to the month almost. But it wasn't like I launched the Conscious Professional and then it was like a all singing, all dancing success story. I got my first corporate client in 2014. 2014. So I set up the company in 2012. My first corporate client in 2014. So, I was one of the first, because I sort of received this in a meditation that I was going to be calling my business the Conscious Professional. I saw the logo, it's like the little meditating dude in a couple sort of lines. And then it was going to be centered on mindfulness. And so I went to my network, which was at the time mainly law firms, said, right, I'm going to do this mindfulness business. How about that then? And they were all like, we don't know what mindfulness is, but we definitely don't want it. So I was like, okay, that's not good. But I did trust this inner voice. I'd learned to trust that. I mean, I've been meditating since I was a teenager, and so the sort of ideas of mindfulness and visioning and kind of deep listening and all of that were central practices in my life already. So I stuck with it, but it did take a little while. It took a little while to take off.
And that's an incredible story. So kind of to Ted's earlier point, like what steps do you recommend for the typical person who may come to you and say, you know what, Neil, I resonate with your message. I feel like I am a rising star in the wrong field. But like, what steps do you recommend for that person?
So I would build a runway from where you are to where you want to be. And that runway, is the sort of thing that is really good to do kind of in a one-to-one coaching thing, because it's so different for every single person. There's kind of amount of money that would be different, that would make you feel safe to kind of step into something new. There would be different aspects of training that you can maybe get under your belt whilst you're still in the job where you're feeling less aligned. There are plans that you can make. You can really land the vision of what this is going to be. So you create a step-by-step plan to help that person feel safe and comfortable and sane in that journey. And then the other thing that I tell people is that the closer we move into alignment between who we are and what we do in the world, the more the universe starts singing your song with you. So if you are misaligned between who you are, what lights you up, what makes you feel really you, and what you're doing in the world, that's going to numb and deplete your energy in a way that divides and dilutes you. And we all know what that feels like, because most people have had that experience. And we also know what it feels like to be around people who are going through that experience, because we all have mirror neurons and we can feel what that feels like. So imagine the universe getting behind you when you listen so clearly to who you are and navigate so responsibly towards what you do in the world, being aligned with who you are. Imagine what it would feel like for the universe to really get behind you, and the energy that starts flowing through you, your life, your business, when that happens. Because there's a type of electricity that only flies through when someone is really on their mission. Mission may be the wrong word for certain people, but for me, I've always kind of resonated with that idea of, you kind of find your mission, and then if it really lights you up, then you're going to light other people up. It's going to be a great ride to be on, even in the bad days and the bad times. You're going to know that you're doing something that you really care about, and it will carry you through those moments. and the highs will be even higher, and so on. And I think that is something which you can't underestimate. And so backing yourself from that perspective, because sometimes when we're feeling dissolved and depleted, it can be hard to even remember the somatic feeling in the body and being of what it was like to really feel lit up and excited in that electric alignment. So I try and create that sort of as a bit of a path of travel, somewhere to navigate to as a sort of energy or a paradigm, and help people kind of move towards it. So yeah, a few steps.
Yeah, it's interesting. So what are your feelings when it comes to like listening to your gut? Like your gut might be telling you to pursue this or to not pursue this. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think listening to your gut is a useful process when you really are well aware of the different internal voices within you. Because sometimes listening to your gut is a sort of a catch-all for any inner voice that is kind of the loudest right now. So, you might have a voice which is accelerating you towards something, and a voice that is pumping the brakes. And it can be hard to know which is fear, which is your inner voice, which is your inner saboteur, which is your, inner wisdom. I think it's very subtle, those inner voices. And that's why I think having some sort of practice of contemplation, of quiet, stillness, that resonates with you, allows you to become more familiar with that internal space and to know the difference between a moment of truth and a moment of fear, a moment of reason. There's all these different things that might come through in that space. And they're subtle. They're subtle, and it requires, in the same way that when we're young, we gradually learn to navigate our outer reality. People have to spend time gradually learning to navigate their inner reality, which is just made up of thoughts and emotions and sensations. But if we don't do that work, then it can really feel like, our inner world is like a bad neighborhood where we don't really want to go alone. And it can be a kind of an experience of threat to navigate through our own fears and worries and the voices where we might be telling ourselves negative things or putting ourselves down, judging ourselves, holding ourselves back. So, I always think those awareness practices are really important, because self-coaching and giving yourself a good kind of inner soundtrack to your life is, so important for a kind of a long-term goal, like setting up your own business, making your mark, whatever it is that you seek to do.
That's a great answer, by the way. And I think the takeaway is that you have to be careful, right? If you don't have that level of awareness, because your fear can sound like, oh, this is my gut, or the way that saboteur, whenever you're pursuing something aspirational, that says, oh, you sure? You can, yeah. So I think it does take some time to really be able to discern the different voices. So hopefully people won't just jump out and say, hey, my gut's telling me I have to do this, without really knowing themselves and spending that time like you're talking about. So let's talk about the conscious professional. Let's talk more about that. What's your mission, and like, who's your target audience? How do you help them?
Yeah, so essentially, target audience tends to be lawyers and busy professionals. Most of my clients are either big law firms or the in-house legal departments of big companies. And what we do are usually short duration, high impact trainings, keynotes, away days, conferences, things like that. where it's kind of our job to inspire engagement and connection between well-being and professional excellence. So that's really the kind of bridge that I seek to make between these awareness-based practices and things like emotional intelligence and conscious communication and personal excellence, and really everything in between on the journey of self-mastery. So that's kind of been our brand since 2012, and the niche tends to be with lawyers, but we do work with lots of different companies, but it's often with their legal function.
So you're an international mindfulness expert. So you worked with all kinds of people. When it comes to entrepreneurs, like what are some of the most common roadblocks that you see that holds them back?
Probably number one is trying to do it all yourself.
Hmm.
And that sort of aspect of individualism in our society gets kind of squashed into an entrepreneur as I've got to somehow have all the answers, figure out all of the skills, all of that. And I think that aspect of thinking about whatever you're doing as a team-based sport from day one, even if your other team members are only like your mom and your dog to start with, that's good enough. Let your dog take you out for a pep walk every now and then, and debrief with your mom, whatever, you start with that team mentality. I remember the first thing that I did as I decided I was going to set up a business. So I just collated all of the contacts that I could find from my work life, from my friendships, everything, and sort of put it all together and thought, like, this is the beginning network. This is really important. This is what it's going to grow from. And it really does. Sometimes we think it needs to grow from the world and we need to make this thing which just sort of immediately offers everything into the world. It's much more likely that it's going to start with the relationships you already have, the people that have already crossed your path. So nurturing that from the very beginning, and working with your strengths and plugging the weaknesses with team members or outsourced bits of work to really help your project come to life and have a life beyond you. So that's probably the biggest one. And then I do quite a lot of work with individuals on imposter syndrome, and actually group trainings on that as well. So I think that's it. That's the journey of self-appreciation, isn't it? And as entrepreneurs, sometimes it's that sense of, well, I have to blow my own trumpet because no one else is going to. So, at least to start with, right? So, you've got to have that sense of, I actually have something of value and I'm prepared to let you know that this is what I stand for and this is what I can help you with. So that sort of level of confidence. But then we have our sort of crushing doubts, which are based in all of the comparisons that the mind loves to make with people are doing it better and quicker and faster and 10xing before we've even 2x'd and, all that sort of stuff. So it's that sense of, steadiness and a set of skills and practices that can keep bringing you back to center, bring you home, give you that sense of, this is where I come back to where things are tough. And, this is what it feels like when I'm in the sweet spot in terms of good self-appreciation, clients enjoying what we're doing, and things are flowing and building.
Now, you mentioned imposter syndrome, and it's interesting because I've worked with people who are having amazing success and they're at the top of their field, and they struggle with that still. So what are some things that you do to help people that are battling imposter syndrome?
I think the biggest takeaway for people when we do group trainings in imposter syndrome is that everybody has it. It's the most nourishing thing to get people to open up around this, and then to hear that everyone else feels the same or similar to how you feel. And because I work with a lot of lawyers in particular, it gets welded into perfectionism. Perfectionism is kind of a very much a lawyer's trait, and it's quite a complicated thing which you have to sort of unpuzzle, because most people who think about having imposter syndrome are actually exhibiting imposter tendencies during a period of personal growth and stretch, which is completely normal. It's like the proper human reaction actually to stepping outside of your comfort zone is to feel a bit like, oh, I can't really live up to this expectation. When we're really in imposter syndrome, which is the more severe, intense, pervasive aspect of it, then both success and failure become a threat, because success is basically another bar that you've got to now meet again. And maybe you got away with it that one time, and now you've made another rod for your back. And failure is obviously still a threat as well. And so it's paralyzing. And that's the severe, intense level of it. So it's really about building self-awareness, normalizing the presence of imposter syndrome. I mean, I got interested in this between being a barrister and setting up the Conscious Professional. I did some freelance gigs, and one of them was training witnesses for big trials and arbitrations around the world. And I got to train some super interesting people, from like billionaires to celebrities to, the managing partner of a massive Magic Circle law firm was actually my first person that I trained. And every single one of them experiences imposter syndrome in court or in a court type experience.
Even the billionaire.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Everyone is terrified about it, because there's that sense of, you're public speaking, which is a big phobia for some people. You're the center of attention. You're being judged, or even if you're just a witness, it feels like you're being judged because there's a judge or a jury or some sort of arbitrary panel. And there's people in fancy dress in some courts around the world as well, which is also terrifying. So you've got like this whole plethora of things which are scary happening all at once. And it really takes you there in terms of, as a human being, to feel safe, stable, and comfortable in an environment which is designed to make you feel everything but those things is a real act of skill. So we all have buttons that can be pushed that can send us in towards that imposter syndrome, or at least imposter tendencies. And in fact, the other end of the scale is a massively inflated sense of self-appreciation. So a delusional sense of self-appreciation. And that's not a healthy aspect of it either. So it's a level of reality, humility, humanity that we're really looking for when we're thinking about healthy levels of self-appreciation. When people sort of get a sense of, okay, this is what it is, everyone gets it sometimes. The people who are in the sort of intense part of it can self-identify, and those people often do need some one-to-one support to move through it. And there's absolutely no shame in that. I think the best people, in every type of profession and industry are well supported by a team of people who look after them, from, all the well-being aspects to the mental aspects and so on. So yeah, it's a really interesting one. There's quite a lot to it, but I think that the biggest thing is kind of having that awareness that it's not just you. It's not just you feeling this way. It's so human.
Absolutely. So shifting gears a little bit, one of the things that I found intriguing when you and I were talking a few weeks back about the people that have side hustles. We have quite a few people that follow us who have side hustles, and they want to take their side hustle and make it their main venture and just start working for themselves. What advice do you have for those people who are watching us now?
So I think it's sort of in line with other things I've said already, but sort of don't wait until you're ready. because that can be a trap. There's quite a lot of people, I think, who get comfortable in the thing that they don't want to be doing. And then they're always waiting to be ready. One more thing needs to be in place before they feel comfortable enough to make that move. I think you've got to expect a bit of discomfort in a journey towards making something, that is your own into the thing. And, don't underestimate what that discomfort will bring out of you on that journey into, whatever it is that you're creating. We sometimes underestimate, imagine what we could do if we devoted all of our energy, love, and attention into the thing that we're really passionate about. Just imagine what that could look like and feel like. And it's hard to know and feel that until you're actually doing it. So it's a combination of, respect the rhythm of what's unfolding and, your preparation period and so on, that kind of runway I talked about before. But don't wait until it feels completely safe, because it never will.
No, that's great. And so, Ted, I mean, that's something you and I talk about all the time, that whole feeling of discomfort and feeling like you're locked in a room and having to get out one way or another. And so, Ted, talk about you, because you speak to this all the time, and how that could potentially improve your performance when you have to have it.
No, definitely. I think, I always, as Eric mentioned, try to look at things as I'm locked in a room and I have to get out, right? So you're gonna try the door, you're gonna, can you go through the ceiling? Can you make a call? Can you send a text message? Last but not least is jump out the window, right? But you gotta, you gotta get out. And I think that's the mindset. I think that sometimes, kind of going back to what you said, Neil, of, expecting everything to be perfect before you do certain things, right? When we think about, a great example of that is during the pandemic, right? There's some businesses that were launched during this time, right? And it's like, hey, we got to figure it out. I mean, there were vaccines that were created during this time, right?
Yeah.
They had to figure it out. Lives were being lost. People were sick. I mean, things stopped. And you just be amazed at how things can be figured out when you're in those situations where you have to figure it out. And I think that's something that entrepreneurs have in common, right? Like once you step out, right, you're out there. You're out there. I mean, it's, it can be as big as you make it, or it can just, flop, right? But it's on you. You're locked in this room of entrepreneurship, and you have to get on the outside, which is success.
Yeah.
And I just think that that's something that you notice, whether you have a person that has a one-man company or 100,000 people in the company. I mean, that leader has that, he or she has that mindset that you got.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's called, I think we call it the inspiration of desperation.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
No, that's good stuff. So, people are sitting on the edge of their seats, and Neil, they're looking at you. They want to become a person of excellence. So what steps do you think people can take to get to that point where they can be that person of excellence?
Well, I think it's sort of it's a paradigm, isn't it? It's not really a destination. What we're really talking about, I suppose, for in my framing of it, would be the journey of self-mastery, which is the journey of conscious leadership as well. It's kind of what that book is all about. And I think it's important to be cultivating practices that show up regularly in your life, which allow you to drop into the fullness of who you are and explore new avenues within your own learning. So, for me, there's meditation and yoga, which shows up every day. There's strength training that shows up 3 times a week. There's running and cycling, and there's learning that I'm doing. There's reading. There's listening to podcasts like this. There are elements that are inbuilt into my day, into my week, into my month. And I think it's important for people to figure out what those supportive aspects are, and to weave them in. I always bring people back towards the awareness piece. I think because it's so central in my journey and also in the work that I do. But I feel it's really important to give yourself moments of integration, which can look like whatever you want it to look like, but needs to have that aspect of navigating from doing mode into being mode or listening mode, and allowing that for yourself, because I think there's only so far that we can go on the journey in a direction that's essentially going to be wholesome long term without turning the lens within. I'm a big fan of the simplicity and the power and truth of as within, so without. If we look around the world at the moment, we can see a lot of very successful corporations and regimes and governments and things like that. But we can also look at a world that is really struggling and that is heavily chaotic and troubled. And we could say, well, outer excellence without inner excellence produces some unwanted outcomes. And I think it's really important to tie those two things together if we want to move in a direction which allows our world to reflect who we want to be.
So you mentioned kind of this awareness piece. What are some simple steps that someone can take? They want to start meditating. They want to get in this habit of mindfulness, but they don't know what to do or where to start. What's something simple and basic that they can put in place to get in the habit of meditating?
So I come across people all the time who come up to me and say, I can't meditate. I'm sure it's great. I think it's great, but I can't do it. So have you got anything else? So I kind of got a bit tired of that and thought, okay, I need to put something together which kind of proves to people that they can, because meditation is like, it's basically feeling safe and comfortable with your eyes closed. Like it's not that hard, but it really freaks people out. Like there's all sorts of things that will arise in your thoughts, in your sensations, in your emotions. And people were like, I can't do this. This is insane or terrifying or just not for me. Like it's got to be an on-ramp into that experience of inner silence, because it's such a precious thing to me. And I think it can give people so much when they really get it. So during the pandemic, this is one of the things that I did when everything was kind of super quiet. I created a program called Zen in 10. So it's a 10-day course online, 15 minutes a day. And by the end of it, it's got a single aim. By the end of it, you will be able to sit in practice for 10 minutes without any music, without your phone, without any crutch or support, and meditate. It's designed to get you to that outcome. And once you can do that, once you can sit in your own presence and explore it with curiosity, then you have a lifelong mindfulness practice, which you can do anytime, anywhere. You don't need to be plugged into anything. You can just go and sit under a tree for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, do your meditation. And I think that's a really, really powerful thing that you can build into your life. And it's designed for busy professionals who don't have very much time. It's almost a condensed mindfulness-based stress reduction type of program, which is the 8-week mindfulness course that has been studied a lot and so on. But it's a quicker way into the practice. So I recommend starting there, and you'll find that on my website or either of my websites. It's called Zen in 10.
All right, Zen in 10. Make sure you check it out.
Yeah.
All right. So we're coming up on the final segment of the show. It's called Write This Down. This is where we each give at least one key takeaway from today's episode that they need to write down so they can level up. So Neil, you're our guest of honor. So what's your takeaway that you want to share that people need to write down?
I'm gonna go with leap and the net will appear, because we had a lot of discussion about that and it terrified Ted. So I'm gonna push that one home. I'm gonna see where it lands. Have your runway, but leap and the net will appear.
Leap and the net will appear. So when you said that, both Ted and I were like,
Yeah, no, that was a good one. That was a good one. Mine is pretty simple. I just think about through my own journey, right? And I think prayer and persistence will lead to the possible, right? So I think that's the biggest thing is once you jump out there, for me it's always been it's like okay, like I'm my belief. It's like, okay, it's God, it's just you and I have jumped out here. Like, I don't know, have you planned for this? Do you know what you're going to, oh, I'm out here now. I'm going to figure it out. Right. And like you said, Neil, it's never going to be the perfect time. It's always going to be something that you could have, a class you could have taken, a training session, it always could have been something else that you could have done. Right. But you're out here now. And then it's interesting. I realize is that how those doors open up, with prayer and being persistent and just kind of continuing. Like you'll just see things start to, opportunities, partnerships, and things that you were like. I've even had situations where there's been events that I didn't want to go to, and I just pushed myself to go and get there. I'm like, wow, it was game changing. It was game changing. I went to that event. It was game changing. I spoke to that person out of all the people in the room. I didn't know any of those people in there. And then it could be another situation where, I strategically planned it out. I knew exactly who I was going. I know Eric Twiggs is one of the speakers and Neil's going to be a speaker and I'm going to get to them. And so does the other 1,000 people in there, right? They know those folks as well. But then when I go to that place and you meet that person and no one else is talking to, and that person is, a key, piece to your puzzle, how would you have known? Right. So just, one, you're being, you're praying, you're putting it out there. And then, you like you just saying, Neil, about the dog, and you walk out with the dog. It just does like the pep walk. Yeah. Right? Dog is walking fast. He's like, wherever you're going, I'm with you. I'm with you. You walk me out in the traffic, I'm with you. Right. I think that's a big big deal. It's like you got to kind of step out there with faith and confidence and be like, you know what, we're going to get to where we need to get to one way or the other. And, and that path might, have some twists and turns in it, but we're going to make it. So, yeah, for me, it's, prayer and persistence will lead you to the possibilities.
Prayer and persistence will lead you to the possibilities. So my thing is, I just when I think about like taking the leap and faith and stepping out there, I think about the Indiana Jones movie where he gets to this point where he's trying to get Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones. He gets to the point where he's trying to get to the Holy Grail, and he's on one side, the Holy Grail's on the other side, and he has what looks like this little pit, like an empty pit, and the instructions say he's supposed to take the step. He doesn't see anything, so he has to finally just basically risk falling into the pit. And all of a sudden, when he puts his foot down, then the path appears. Then as he keeps stepping, the path keeps going. And I think that's kind of how it is. Yeah. And I've been in situations where, like, I had a time where I was procrastinating pursuing the public speaking space. And I'm like, I don't know. And finally, when I go to the Toastmasters meeting, I meet someone who trains public speakers. He just happens to be at my club that day. And that set off another chain. But I would have never met him had I not finally taken a step. And I think that that's the key, is to focus on taking the next step, because quite often there's other resources that you can't see until you take the step.
Nice.
Yeah, this has been an awesome show. This is Neil. I have all kinds of other questions to ask you, but we keep you here for another hour, and I know you're on UK time. So
Neil say it's midnight. Neil says it's midnight. Yeah, keep me here all night.
Neil said your time is up.
It's been great. It's been great.
This has been a fantastic show, Neil. So how can people connect with you?
So corporate stuff goes through the consciousprofessional.com, and then the more kind of public facing stuff, books and events and retreats and courses and stuff, that's neilseligman.com. And feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram. Pretty easy to find on all the major platforms.
Good. And you have your 2 books too that people can get, right? The Conscious Leadership, Conscious Leadership, and 100 Mindfulness Meditations.
That's right. Yeah. So 100 Mindfulness Meditations is kind of like a recipe book of meditations to inspire your daily practice. And then Conscious Leadership is the journey of self-mastery seen through the lens of mindfulness. So really practical, both books, lots of kind of activities and exercises, things to read, tools and things. So they're all about action.
Fantastic. This is definitely a show that people are going to want to share. So don't forget to share the show.
Share the show.
That's right. Don't keep Neil all to yourself. Share it. There's somebody else that needs to hear the message and heighten their self-awareness so they can become that person of excellence. So don't forget to, you can listen to this later on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and any of those other places where you like to consume your content. And again, thank you, Neil Seligman, for sharing what you shared. I know people are going to be going to buy your books and take your courses and call you for mindfulness coaching and all that other good stuff. So that is our time for this week. And until next time, have a great one.